To celebrate Newsbud's second-year anniversary, we want to say thank you. That's why for a limited time, we're going to release each report in full for everyone to see. And it all begins Sunday, April 28th. Newsbud relies on your subscriptions and donations so we can continue to run this organization. So that means we're essentially going to be working for free, but you can still support our work by going to newsbud.com and donating. We want to thank each and every one of you who has helped to make Newsbud possible. And we want to give you the opportunity to see the great work we're doing here at newsbud.com. This week, former CIA Director Mike Pompeo was confirmed as President Trump's Secretary of State. I've heard people say, let's give him a chance, that he just negotiated a peace deal with North Korea. But I'm a little more than reluctant to, quote, give him a chance. This is the same former CIA Director Mike Pompeo who gave a Saudi Arabian prince the CIA's award for counterterrorism for Saudi Arabia's work on world security and peace. Saudi Arabia has one of the worst records on human rights violations, and currently Saudi Arabia has been bombing and killing thousands and thousands of innocent civilians in Yemen for the past few years. This is the same former CIA director who said that he wants to violate the Constitution and everyone's right to privacy and spy on everyone in America.
Let's start with surveillance, if we could. You recently wrote an op-ed article saying that Congress ought to pass a new law reestablishing the collection of all metadata. Those are your words, all metadata. So you would basically get the Congress and the country back into the business of collecting millions and millions of phone records on law-abiding people. You go on in this op-ed article to say that these phone records ought to be combined with publicly available financial and lifestyle information into a comprehensive, searchable database. So you would be in favor of a new law collecting all of this data about the personal lives of our people. And I think it would be helpful if you could start by saying, are there any boundaries, in your view, to something this sweeping?
Senator, you and I did have a chance to discuss this. There are, of course, boundaries to this. First and foremost, they begin with legal boundaries that exist today. That piece that I was referring to was talking about the U.S. government's obligation to do all that it can in a lawful constitutional manner to collect foreign intelligence important to keeping America safe.
Congressman, that's not what you were talking
Senator,
about. You said collecting all metadata.
Yes, Senator.
All metadata.
Let me, if I might, just continue. Yes, I still continue to stand behind the commitment to keep Americans safe, and by conducting lawful intelligence collection. When I was referring to metadata there, I was talking about the metadata program that the USA Freedom Act has now changed in fundamental ways. You should recall, voted for the USA Freedom Act, and I understand its restrictions on efforts by all of the U.S. government to collect information.
But you wrote this op-ed since the passage of the law. So after the law passed, you said, let's get back into the business of collecting all of this metadata. And I'm curious what kind of information about finances and lifestyles would you not enter into your idea of this giant database?
Well, Senator, first of all, I have to begin by saying today that would be, in most instances, what you referred to there would be unlawful under current law. And so, as the director of the CIA, you have my assurance we will not engage in unlawful activity. But I think this committee, the American people, demand that if there's publicly available information someone has out there on our public available site, I think we have an obligation to use that information to keep Americans safe. If someone's out there on their Facebook page talking about an attack or plotting an attack against America, I think you would find the director of the CIA and the intelligence community grossly negligent if they didn't pursue that information.
Congressman, I don't take a backseat to anybody in terms of protecting this country when our security is on the line. I wrote the section of the Freedom Act that gives the government emergency authority to move when it's critical to protect the country. That's not what we're talking about here. You're talking about your interest in setting up a whole new metadata collection system, which is far more sweeping than anything the Congress has.
Mike Pompeo is also for killing whistleblowers, regardless of where you stand on Snowden. Whether you think he is legit or not, Pompeo says he thinks that he should get the death penalty.
The traitor Edward Snowden steal that information. He should be brought back from Russia and given due process, and I think the proper outcome would be that he would be given a death sentence.
This is how Pompeo wants to treat whistleblowers, by killing them. This is the same Mike Pompeo who supports torture and called Guantanamo Bay a gold mine of intelligence. Mike Pompeo also supports the U.S. wars of aggression in Afghanistan, Iraq, and wants further conflict in Syria and Iran. Mike Pompeo even accused Iran of being linked to ISIS, but we all know who really created ISIS.
Russia threatens allies and partners, both militarily, as seen through its invasions of Georgia in 2008 and Ukraine in 2014, and through an aggressive campaign to undermine Western democratic institutions. In light of Russia's unacceptable actions, NATO is more indispensable than ever. As NATO allies agreed, the use of military-grade nerve agent developed by Russia on UK territory was a reckless action that put the lives of innocent civilians at risk.
Now, it looks like the Trump administration got another establishment war hawk who has a cozy relationship with Israel and Saudi Arabia, which he will both visit on his first official trip coming up very soon. For more in-depth coverage of Mike Pompeo, go to newsbud.com and see our articles. This week, Newsbud's founder and editor Sibel Edmonds and myself published a report discussing the closed-door Pentagon budget deal. We also covered U.S. interventionism, foreign aid, and the sellouts on Capitol Hill who claim they represent the public. Plus, we take a look at Senator Rand Paul's major flip-flop decision in favor of Mike Pompeo and much more. The point you brought up about Rand Paul earlier, Rand Paul over the years has said a lot of things that a lot of people liked. I've heard things that he says where I'm like, man, this guy, wow, this is great.
Thumbs up, Rand Paul. Absolutely, me too.
And like you said, just several times totally gone the opposite direction of what.
There's nobody left alive who plotted to attack us on 9/11. I've asked people repeatedly, tell me the names of those left alive in Afghanistan, in Pakistan, anywhere in the world. We're now sending people to war who weren't even born when 9/11 was. And every administration comes, not just Republican, Democrat, they come and say, oh, well, it's just fine. We're going to keep fighting these wars. And it's like that it has something to do with 9/11. No, it has nothing to do with 9/11. Everybody around the world that is a radical Islamist we now are at war with because we said, oh, we got the permission to go at 9/11. But when you were in Congress, you had a little bit different position. Your position with Libya was that we should get authorization. Your position in 2013 was also, you wrote an op-ed with Tom Cotton saying, well, we should give the president the authority he needs to go into Syria. Not because you were like me that we shouldn't get involved in another war, because you were eager to get involved and you wanted to give the president permission and say, please, President Trump, let's go to war in Syria. But I think we need to think these things through, and we need to not be so carte blanche that the Constitution does give just carte blanche, permission for the president to do whatever he wants. Do you think the Iraq War was a mistake?
So I was running a machine shop in Kansas at the time, so I don't have a contemporaneous view that I expressed.
No opinions back then? How about opinions now?
I may well have had an opinion.
But your president said it very clearly. He says that the Iraq War was the single worst decision ever made. So once again, I'm concerned that you won't be supporting the president, that you will be influencing him in a way that I think his inclinations are actually better than many of his advisors, that the Iraq War was a mistake, that we need to come home from Afghanistan. He was against being involved in Syria at many times in his career. So I think he does have good instincts. And my main concern is that will you be one who will listen to what the president actually wants instead of being someone who advocates for us staying forever in Afghanistan, another Iraq war, bombing Syria without permission? So these are the advice you will give. And I guess that's my biggest concern with your nomination is that I don't think it reflects the millions of people who voted for President Trump who actually voted for him because they thought it'd be different, that it wouldn't be the traditional bipartisan consensus to bomb everywhere and be everywhere around the world. So that's my main concern, and I just want to make sure that that's loud and clear to everyone. That is my concern.
Thank you, Senator Paul.
With Rand Paul, as I said, it has become cry wolf phenomena for me. I don't even pay attention anymore. And then the other thing that is important, it's good to come out and admit that you were wrong on something. You know, I think it takes courage. And I would like to say I was wrong about Rand Paul. I've known this for the past 6 years, but initially I bought into it.
The full report is open to all right now at newsbud.com. Plus, this week at Newsbud, our Russia expert breaks down Russia's reaction to the U.S.-Syria strikes and the current competition between the U.S. and Russia for the Middle East's oil. Our China expert covers the news on the Korean Peninsula, China, the U.S., and more. Our constitutional expert tackles the gun control debate, but first, Newsbud is only made possible by our viewers. We are 100% people funded through subscriptions and donations, and a Newsbud membership will get you instant access to hundreds of exclusive videos, articles, and much more. This week, Newsbud published my exclusive interview with Dr. Dan Naitis, who has 20 years of experience. Dr. Naitis shares his concerns on vaccines, the insurance companies, and the pharmaceutical industry's influence over the medical industry. Plus, find out about the potential health risks associated with the flu shot and vaccines in general. This is a must-see, nearly 1 hour-long interview, and it's available right now for members at newsbud.com. This week on Newsbud's Geopolitical Report with Kurt Nimmo breaks down the evolution of U.S. foreign policy and what the current strategy is in Syria, the Middle East, and beyond, as the war machine continues its path of destruction while raking in the profits. This video is exclusively available for members at newsbud.com. Non-members can watch it now at Newsbud Vimeo On Demand. Now, each week on Newsbud's Russian Newspaper Monitor, Professor Kovacevic deconstructs the headlines in the Russian newspapers while providing expert analysis. In this week's episode, Professor Kovacevic covers the latest on what the Russian newspapers are reporting in reaction to the U.S. strikes on Syria and how Russia and its allies plan to respond. He also analyzes the current competition between the U.S. and Russia and their fight over the control of the oil fields in the Middle East, and much more. This is must-see news and analysis. You will not find it anywhere but newsbud.com, so be sure to become a member today. Or you can check us out at Newsbud Vimeo On Demand. Now, China has been in the news a lot lately, and Newsbud has its own weekly show called China Watch, which covers all the latest developments in Asia and beyond. This week on Newsbud's China Watch, Peter Lee breaks down what the possibility of a real peace treaty looks like on the Korean Peninsula, who is for it and who may be trying to sabotage a peace deal, and how this will affect U.S. and China's relationship. The full report's available right now for members at newsbud.com. Non-members can watch it now at Newsbud Vimeo On Demand. This week, Newsbud's constitutional attorney John W. Whitehead tackles the gun control debate as he points out how the ones in the streets protesting gun violence are completely ignoring the biggest purveyor of gun violence in history, the government. Find out what one of America's top constitutional attorneys has to say on this in this week's episode of Battlefield America. The full episode is exclusively at newsbud.com for members. Non-members can watch it now at Newsbud Vimeo On Demand. This week, Kurt Nimmo wrote an exclusive article for Newsbud exposing the bold State Department lies blaming Hezbollah and ultimately Iran for being responsible for the 1983 bombing of a U.S. embassy in Lebanon, completely ignoring the fact that Hezbollah didn't even exist in 1983. And to this day, there is no evidence to support these accusations. Even a former U.S. Secretary of Defense, Caspar Weinberger, admits. Nimmo provides an excellent overview and background on this, in addition to tying it all together to recent events and the anointment of Mike Pompeo as Secretary of State. This is a must-read article. It's available right now for members at newsbud.com. Newsbud also offers our own aggregated news, and we call it Sabel's Picks. It's the best source for aggregated news online. Newsbud's founder and editor Sabel Edmonds handpicks each story herself, and you get about 90 links a week of the most important and blacked out stories. Now, if you're not already a member, join today. There is no contract or obligation, and it costs practically nothing. Plus, your subscription allows this independent news organization to continue to operate. And you'll receive instant access to hundreds of exclusive videos and articles. From all of us here at Newsbud, thank you for your support, and stay tuned for next week's lineup.